So Cenk Uygur asked Bernie Sanders about party unity, and his answer was somewhat questionable.
But the New York Times had a very interesting story about how some Democratic donors are going to dinners to work to make sure that you lose. Now, those are Democratic donors, not Republican donors. And now even more controversially, and this is not me, it's the New York Times. They said Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Pete Buttigieg, and Terry McAuliffe were at some of those dinners. Does that put a lie to party unity?
Well, I'll let the individuals you name speak for themselves. But, two things. I think we are going to win the Democratic primary. And I think at the end of the day, we will have the support of Democrats across the board. They may not be, the Democratic establishment and the big money donors may not be excited about a Bernie Sanders presidency, but I hope and believe they will be far more supportive of me than they would be of seeing Donald Trump get reelected.
Are you a little worried that some of the Democratic donors will betray the Democratic Party if you're the candidate or any progressive is the candidate and support a third party and allow or at least risk Trump winning?
Cenk, at this unbelievably dangerous moment in American history, I have a hard time believing that anybody with any sense at all would do anything to see that Trump remains in the White House. Because if he does, democracy itself is being threatened. Certainly, there'll be no serious effort to deal with the global crisis of climate change, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know the answer, but I hope very much that enormous pressure would be put on anybody who claims to be a Democrat, who would think for one moment of doing anything that would aid Donald Trump.
That is a little bit naive. It is. So here's where he's right. The overwhelming majority of the people, of Democratic voters, will go, yeah, Bernie. Even the ones who are not so hot on him right now. Even the overwhelming majority of the Hillary voters from 2016, they would go, I mean, of course, what's the question? Yes, Bernie over Donald Trump all day long, of course. But here's what he's missing. There's a giant difference from the voters, the people, and the establishment, the elites. And that's where I think it gets cloudy in his mind. He thinks like, well, obviously, what do you mean? Nobody's going to go out of their way, help Donald Trump get elected because they don't like me? You crazy? They're not going to do that. The people aren't going to do that. 90% of Democrats are going to go, yep, okay, even if I didn't want Bernie, he won the primary, that's it. We're voting for him, no questions, that's it. But you think the donors, Democratic donors, even hardcore Democratic donors, you think they're going to fall in line behind Bernie Sanders? No, they're not going to do it. I guarantee you they're not going to do it. And I think what Cenk is getting at is there were a few stories a month or so ago about how the breakfast cereal Hickenlooper, who has an approval rating of, I think it might literally be 0% or 0% support in the Democratic primary, at best 1%. He was saying like, no, I'll run third party because Bernie Sanders, his argument is, Bernie Sanders, if he's the nominee, that'll help Donald Trump get elected. No, it won't. That's the best chance of beating Donald Trump. But when you have a centrist jump in as a third party, well, yeah, then that makes it possible that Donald Trump can win. Because even if the centrist chips away 3%, that could be a crucial 3%. So I think that's what Cenk is getting at. And Bernie seems to be a little bit naive about this, where he thinks like, well, what do you mean? No, if it's me or Trump, people are going to go for me. Because in his mind, this is what he did for Hillary. He doesn't agree with Hillary, doesn't like Hillary, but when it was Hillary versus Trump, I think he actually supported the lesser of two evils, Hillary Clinton. So in his mind, he thinks, well, even the Democratic establishment is going to go, well, Bernie to them is the lesser of two evils. They might not like me, but they know that I'm better than Trump. So what do you mean? But as Michael Brooks says, and I love the phrasing on this, capital breaks fascist. It's true. Virtually the entire Democratic donor class would say, not Bernie. Maybe some of them would break for Trump, but I think probably most of them would try to prod a guy like Hickenlooper to get in the race as a third party, or they would back Howard Schultz, by the way, who we haven't heard anything from in a while because he's such an abysmal failure and he's so terrible at this. But I think Democratic donors would try to, tell somebody, hey, do a third party run, do a third party one, and we'll back you. And then what'll happen is the media will then do their job as, sycophants to power and influence and money, and they'll act like, oh, but yeah, no, of course, hey man, listen. They'll concern troll, but really what this is them propping up the people they want to prop up. So what they'll say is, I don't think Bernie can win against Trump, but hey, at least there's a third option, and that third option of fucking Hickenlooper or Schultz or that, hey, they might have a chance in this election, don't you think? And the media will push out this narrative endlessly. Bernie can't win, Bernie can't win, Bernie can't win. Look at Hickenlooper or Schultz or whoever it may be that's running third party. Look at them, they're viable. And then that is how you have the nightmare scenario of basically the establishment doing everything it can to destroy Bernie Sanders and help anybody else, whether it inadvertently helps Trump or whether it helps the third party candidate. That's what they're going to do. That's what I think will happen. So Bernie, you're right that the people, the voters, will largely break for you. 90% will break for you. Because I've seen it myself on Twitter, people who are hardcore Hillary stans, but they'll say, like, okay, but if Bernie wins, yeah, I'll vote for Bernie in the general, of course. But again, there's a difference between the people, the voters, and the Democratic establishment. The Democratic elites, the donors, most of them, I think, will under no circumstances support you because you threaten their money. You do. You threaten their money. The Democratic strategist class, even the Nancy Pelosi's and the Chuck Schumers, I think they'll be ambivalent. I think they'll kind of try to stay out of the race and not say anything in a similar way to how, remember what Paul Ryan did with Trump, where he was just like fucking hiding for the entire general election, and every time they'd ask him a question, he'd be like, what? Who's Trump? I don't even know who that is, y'all. What does that even mean? What is that? I don't even know. What? What are you saying? New phone, who this? I think that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer will do a similar thing. So establishment, corporatist Democratic politicians, I think many of them will not go for Bernie. And I think the Democratic donors, the majority of them won't go for Bernie. So he's a little naive in that sense, man. He really is. Now, but the reaction to that, I think, is crucially important. I think it's crucially important. Because I think there's a way, obviously, that Bernie, using the bully pulpit as the nominee, can destroy all that. Can, step on that argument and just fucking... what do you mean? Your guys are being ridiculous. And I hope he finds it in him to give the proper response. And the proper response is really a fuck you right back. And it's not like walking on eggshells or kowtowing to their shitty fucking snowflake feelings. The response is, I'm what you got. I'm the best way of winning. And I guarantee you my argument is more potent, and we're going to get Medicare for all. We're going to get free college. We're going to get a living wage. We're going to end the wars. And if you don't like it, I don't give a fuck. I'm where it's at. So if he responds in a way where he kind of slaps them aside and mocks them, then he wins, of course. Because remember, what happened with Trump? Trump did the same shit when the Republican establishment was like, I don't know, oh my God, he does mean tweets and stuff. He's like, all right, bitch, here's another mean tweet. How you like them apples? And then what did they do? They ran Evan McMuffin. And he was like, oh, yes, I'm a very serious person. I'm polling at 1%, yes. And Trump was just mocking him, laughing at him and all that. So Bernie's got to respond in a similar way when the Democratic establishment comes for him, because ultimately they are a paper tiger. Because like I said, the people are going to be with Bernie. So, but treat them like the paper tiger they are, Bernie. He's a nice guy on a personal level. And he wants to be cordial. And that's part of the problem. Is you got to throw around your weight sometimes, and you got to call them out, because guess what? They've been undermining you at every turn. So don't just sit there and fucking take it. Fire back. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, totally viable targets. Go for it.